Welcome to another session. I hope you are well. I would like to provide an antidote to the two sessions that I covered in the past 2 days. And as I bring this week to a conclusion, today being Friday, I thought perhaps a useful title would be Standing in the Gap. Standing in the Gap. Now, we all know what that generally refers to. Um, Usually, most people will associate that with the idea of risking one's life for another, someone you love, care about, risking your life for a nation that you love, risking your life for perhaps uh, a cause uh, that you believe in, hold strongly in your heart, risking your life for purpose. Standing in the gap simply means playing the part that you should play. The two sessions prior, I labeled the two sessions part one and part two of the social dance. And at the core of the message was the importance of ensuring that when it comes to relationships and in making decisions about who to be your significant other or someone who will join you in that journey towards the future, the life you want, and I guess pair bonding, it's important to ensure that you don't isolate yourself in that decision making process. You bring other people, people in your inner circle, your community, your family, your close friends, and allow them to play the role of a judge and a jury in reviewing the person or persons and giving you their feedback unashamedly um, and unabashed. The whole concept of standing in the gap is the opposite. In this particular instance, and in today's session, I'm saying you also have a moral duty. We all do. To play the role of the person who will be one of the jury members or the judge and provide the same quality of service to someone you love and care about. Let me start as follows. I have found that in the majority of cases, people who love you and care for you will stand back, see you drive yourself into a ditch, and say absolutely nothing. Uh, I wrestled with this. Obviously, I've also seen cases where they try to stop you from going forward for their selfish reasons. Now, in those cases, the selfish reasons stem from not the fact that people um, do not resist change. It comes from the perspective that people resist being changed. And if you're making a change, a drastic change to your life, then you're forcing the group ipso facto to adapt to your change, whether that be your absence or your new life, and therefore they resist having to change themselves. Um, and so they might want to cause you to stay. The whole concept of single women keep women single is a good example, or single men stop single men from moving forward is another one. But it's less so with regards to men than it is with regards to women. So it's not impossible that you might see yourself in a family, and the moment you decide that you're settling down, the rest of the family are not in support of that decision. Not because you haven't made the right decision, and not because they do not like the person you have chosen, but because they do not want to have to adapt to your absence. They do not want to adapt to the fact that you're moving on, and the decisions you're making, therefore, will cause them to change, and they resist that. I'm not speaking about that group. I'm speaking about you playing the role of standing in the gap for people you care about. My observation has been most people do a terrible job with regards to being honest. So, for example, your best friend comes to you and says, I met someone, I think we're going to get married. What do you genuinely say? And is it in good faith? Is it a fair perspective and review carried out on your part? And do you give the information from a loving, kind perspective? It's important to know, therefore, you really, really have to understand that just as much as you want to make the right decisions for yourself, other people also rely on you in helping them make the best decisions for them. And standing in the gap requires that you have the fortitude, the courage, you have the mental ability. I would like to use the word bravery, but that would trivialize the word. But that you simply say what you think about the person. Sometimes it's unsolicited and sometimes it's solicited. Irrespective, take some time, do your research, let it be in good faith, let it not be biased, and say what you really think. But when you say so, the intention is to place the relationship, ideally, in a more superior position. You're thinking about the person's future. You're not thinking about losing the relationship. And my experience has been that most people do not say what they really think to loved ones because they are scared of losing the relationship. So you might find a mother will not be honest to the daughter for fear that it might strain the relationship she has with her daughter. A father might not speak very directly with his son for fear that perhaps his son will decide to distance himself from the family. Therefore, we seek peace. In the short term, it might seem like a meaningful compromise. In the long run, we tend to regret it. For a number of reasons, you don't say your truth and your peace. The person who deserves and needs that honest conversation is therefore excluding from his decision-making process or from her decision-making process your feedback, your lived experience, and your wisdom. And therefore, there's a possibility that the choices they might be making might lead them down a path that is regrettable, but avoidable. And what you're banking on is that somehow they awaken to the right decision and choices without experiencing the pitfalls of a bad decision. In other words, most people believe in hope. Hope is not a strategy. And I have seen and I have found that most people, when it comes to people they love and care about, they never give the honest feedback. I've seen this in so many people around my inner circle. They will not speak to a brother or a sister or a best friend or just a friend about what they have in their hearts. It's not unusual to find out. Think about, in this particular instance, yourself. You know someone who is worried about a relationship that the person has with a third party, and they've never expressed how they really feel to that third party, but they have expressed it to you. And sometimes you are perplexed and thinking, why are you sharing this with me? I can see your position, I can see your point, I can understand your concerns, but you should share this with them. And in most cases, they tend to go by or say the following, well, I don't want to ruin the relationship or the friendship we have. I don't want to ruin the connection we have. Or they might even say things such as, it's not my place. And I'm saying, when you do that, you're not standing in the gap. We are supposed to be our brothers and our sisters' keepers. And that requires honesty, humility, accountability. You are an accountability partner for that person. You must be honest to that person. And in delivering your honest observations, you must be humble, so that you allow the person the opportunity to receive what you're giving them, to process what you've given them. And here is the most important part: to choose for themselves whether they reject or accept what you've given them. Now that's a very important part of what I've shared so far. Let me just expand on that very briefly. Most people are not good givers, just in the same way that most people are not good receivers. I talked about the importance of being a good receiver in a session I did previously. But most people are not good givers. You see, most people give what they want to receive. A selfish, almost narcissistic perspective of life. Think about this. The golden rule says, do unto others as you would that they do unto you. At face value, it seems like a powerful way to live life, but um, it's a wrong principle, especially in this world of ours that is changing, certainly in the West and in other parts of the West, outside the West. The reason being that people's taste and appetites and tolerances for evil and pain have changed. There are some people who generally enjoy pain as an art or as an act of lovemaking. Pain. There are other people who see lovemaking to be a pleasure. Some people get their pleasure by first going through the process of pain, bondage, and all the fetishes. So think about this. If that person who enjoyed pain was applying the golden rule, recognizing that they would wish someone would do to them what they want, which is pain, they might give pain in exchange. So I tend to follow what I call the silver rule, which inverts the golden rule, which has to do with do not do unto others as you would that they do not do unto you. Very simple. The reason I brought in the golden rule is to simply say as follows. In standing in the gap for people you've met, for people you love, and people who are your beloved or beloved, or people you care about, what you're doing is you're becoming your brother's keeper. You're effectively playing the role, which is the greatest commandment of one. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Meaning, love your neighbor as thou love thyself, which is the second part of that commandment. It's simply indicating to you that there is only one I am, and we are all one I am. And therefore, when one party suffers, the whole suffers. And if you can see, standing back, at the suffering that is befalling someone else, is your role to intercede on their behalf, to ensure that the wider I does not suffer. Standing in the gap is something we all have to do, despite how difficult it might be. And here is how to start the process. If the pain, this is a general saying, if the pain of making a change is less than the pain of remaining where you are, you tend to see people take that step and make a change. Whenever the pain of remaining where you are, it's no different from the pain of making a change, you tend to see people stagnate. So for example, think about people who jump on boats and go across the seas, seeking asylum because they want a better life. What they've come to is the understanding that the pain of staying where they were was far worse than the pain and even death of making that journey. So therefore, they have the motivation and they take that step and they make that journey. On the other hand, if where they were was more comfortable, they would never journey across the seas, risking their lives for something that does not provide a net benefit to where they were previously. With regards to standing in the gap, the pain of being quiet and saying nothing has to be greater, which will encourage you, propel you, guide you into saying something. In other words, I'm almost making a moral, philosophical invitation. I'm saying it's a moral duty to be authentic, to be honest with people. It's also your moral obligation to say what you have seen. Don't worry about the invitation coming to you sometimes when it hasn't been solicited. If you do so with humility, with honesty, and in good faith, what you find is that what you give, you're not giving it to that person. You're being and doing right by self. Effectively, you're doing to the universe. Sometimes the voice speaks through us to other people. And the calling you might have in that particular instance might be to save that person from a hurt in the future, or to draw their attention to something they may not have seen, or to cause them to hesitate. So I would encourage you to think about the fact that despite you wanting the best for yourself in a relationship, what you give always comes back. If you give good, the good comes back to you. If you don't give anything, then nothing comes back to you. You see, a seed, going back to 2 sessions ago when I talked about the soil, the parable of the sower, some fell on rocky grounds amongst the thorns and on good soil. The seed you sow into other people's lives do not always create a harvest in that life. Sometimes it's the next generation, or in another generation, or you get your harvest from another soil. Your role is to plant that seed. And that seed is your word, your observations, your recommendations, and your honest advice. So with the relationship, whether you're male or female, always stand in the gap. I'll conclude with something that I think is important, but also related to the conversation that we've had. I have, in my personal experiences, observed, both in my inner circle and outer circle, people who really, really did not approve of a particular union or relationship. And they said nothing. They said nothing, but they were hoping that the relationship would run its course and fail, so that the need for them to have said something would no longer be necessary. And as the relationship has blossomed and gotten to the stage where their voices and words are no longer relevant because the person has made a choice, they have an anger and a sense of resentment. My observation has been that resentment comes from within, because at the right time you said nothing, and you were hoping that by chance, by happenstance, the relationship would not blossom into what it would have, and you wouldn't have had to have said anything because you risk offending the person. So you place the relationship before truth, honesty, and your integrity. It's important to understand that if you want to have a successful relationship, it genuinely requires taking the risk to invest in other people's relationships and accepting what comes along the way, good, bad, or indifferent. Your obligation should be to the truth. You know, a beautiful saying is that truth is beauty and beauty is truth. That's all you need to know and all you will ever need. Truth is beauty, beauty is truth. That is all you ever need to know and all you will ever need. When you stand in the gap, you're doing so for truth. You're not doing so for the relationship. Whether the relationship breaks or becomes stronger, you have to stay in integrity to the truth. I hope today's session has been useful.